Over here in Mesquite Bay on third chain, working these areas here all the way down on the runway, all the way down toward Cedar Flat. This whole front shoreline, particular area starting to kind of light up a little bit now. Again, we've had, this past week, had large fluctuation in our water, had some good high tides there for a little while, and then it dropped back out on us again. So it's always something you have to contend with this time of year. So there's haven't really got into a consistent level for any extended period of time. So make sure that you're checking your tide results every morning or afternoon or whenever you're particularly going to fish, typically a time frame, so you won't run into a oyster bar or sandbar or hit something that's typically which you wouldn't hit when you got higher water in there. So always make sure that you got those tide reports down and you know what's going on in correlation to where you're going to be fishing. But that said, this area up in here, you got lots of grass that's here on that shoreline. Like I say, it's starting to kind of light up a little bit. Water temps are holding in those low to mid 70s. It's tripped up to some upper 70s. We've had some big old bluebird sky days here on the past few days, and it's gotten pretty warm later in the day, either late morning or early afternoon. Even in later afternoon, it's gotten even a little bit warmer than that if you're fishing in that time frame. But that is happening. So with that consistency taking place in the water temp, we're going to start seeing these trout push up on grass. And that's kind of a trend that we're starting to see now pretty consistently. We get on some of these big grass flats kind of into this area here, like on Cedar Flat or even on the Matagorda side, on the other side of Cedar. Then you get up in the Cedar Bayou itself, pushing up down the little channel area that comes back down to the Gulf back in here. You've got grass all up and down the edges, and you got some little flat areas that's got grass. And any of these types of areas that are like that, where you've got some deep water access close by, and then you've got the grass that's there, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to catch some pretty good fish, whether they be in the slot, whether it be over the slot. But you're going to get some opportunities that you're really going to enjoy some quality fish. Biggest thing is being patient with it, though, because there's a bunch of little ones that have showed up as well. You know, those 12 to 14s are in there as well, but we're also catching some 16s to 20s, a few in that mid 20 range, but quality fish. So, but that's where they're coming off of. They're coming off the grass, those grass with the potholes in those areas like that. So if you're fishing an area like that, whether it be up here in Mesquite or wherever, let that be your target area, and that's what you're kind of wanting to go after. Now, things that we've been throwing, like I say, we're in our transition days, not too far away from a new moon and eclipse coming up. And on top of that, I'm not quite sure what the effect is going to be on that. We shall see. Kind of curious. I've never fished an eclipse before, so it'll be a first time for me. So if you get the opportunity to be on the water on that day, then see what it's all about. So we're going to see. But anyway, we've been throwing original size, been sprinkled in the 5-inch down south, the big smooth by down south, which is a 5-6 inch bait. We've been throwing that some too. We've had pretty good results with all those particular baits. Any particular color, there's the typical ones: big papa, magic grass, white ice, bone diamond, mud minnow in the burner shad, watermelon red. Those kind of tried and true colors have been pretty good for us. Have been very consistent catching on those particular baits. The knock and tail, the same thing. The greenback, the rogue, heavy metal, those three flavors primarily. With a lot of, we're starting to see a lot of the little ghost minnows start to show up, real clear baked, a little swimming around if you haven't seen those before. So if you have something like a Little John, golden red glitter, or the kitchen sink, any of those kind of flavors like that, be a real good color to kind of mimic those particular baits, because they're little bitty, man. They're like an inch, maybe inch and a half. So something close to that size-wise, but the color-wise, they're ghost minnows. Like I say, they're really clear-bodied bait, and you're starting to see big numbers and schools of those things swimming around over these grass flat areas, and that's another one thing that's kind of contributing to these fish pushing up on there besides getting ready to lay eggs. But food source, always important to have your food source that you're going to work in there. Throwing the soft dine XL a little bit. Have not thrown corkies of any style in the last couple of weeks. I've just kind of trended away from those for myself personally, just because I like to throw plastics more than anything else. So we've kind of stuck with those. A few top water baits. The Spook Junior, the Lele, has been in the arsenal now for a couple of months for me. So it's been a really good bait to have. So if they're really not really wanting to commit to a little bit bigger topwater bait, the Lele's about half the size. So sometimes we get better opportunities with it because it's a little bit of a subsurface bait as well, because you can keep it just under that, so it makes it really good and effective. So if those fish don't want to attack that topwater bait other than just slapping at it or swirling on it, then you can drop it down in their face and you'll get a few more opportunities that way. But again, got another pretty good week. Looks like we're heading our way, weather-wise anyway. So always check your reports. Like I mentioned earlier, the tide reports. Make sure you're incorporating your majors and minors into your fishing day if at all possible. Give you the best opportunity to catch fish in and around your time frame that you're going to be on the water. It's a tried and true thing, man. You got to, if you really don't know about it, educate yourself on the majors and minors, because you just give yourself a really good positive opportunity when you're out trying to locate fish. Jaybird Point, all the way down to Spalding Bite area. You know, I've said it many times, reported on this lots, that this is one of my favorite areas to fish, whether it be summer months, spring months, fall, winter, it doesn't matter. It's a very good all-around area. Of course, you got a lot of the back lakes that are in some of these, which I love to get into. When we had our higher tides earlier in the week, we had some opportunities. We could get back in those and we could throw some topwater baits. You know, we're fishing knee to mid-thigh deep water in a couple of those little areas. If not, then we would fish the guts that were leading back into them, whether it be back in this little middle lake, these lakes that go back into here. Those are all interconnected there in some form. We've got another one that's right in this area here. And this one here you can get to from Carlos to this little area right here. I've done that before. Just get on this shoreline here and just dock the boat, anchor it up, then walk across the land and walk off into that little pond that's back there. And they've had some pretty good resulting days back there catching redfish, a few scattered trout, but more than anything redfish. But we've been working all this shoreline, been working the grass, been working the shale beds that are out in some of these areas, especially when that water's kind of dropped out on us. That's when these little back lake areas, the guts that lead to those back lake areas, you can have some quality days. Those fish will dive off into that to help concentrate them some, because they don't want to get caught up on the flat or in that shallower water. Even though those redfish we've seen before, you know, backs out of the water swimming in super shallow stuff, but more times than not, you're going to find fish in one of those guts. That's why we've talked about this in wintertime months when it's colder, when those lower tides happen, is find you a section where you've got multiple guts that you can fish consecutively. If you don't find fish in one of them, you can find them in one of the others. Somewhere you're going to locate some fish hanging in one of those guts that are concentrating. But that said, we've been working these outer edges out here, just kind of being patient, working over the grass, working the potholes, working shale beds. As we get further into the springtime, these shale reefs and bars and stuff are going to start lighting up as well. We're probably still a few weeks away from that really starting to show up. You know, you're starting to look at areas out like at Long Reef, that area like that. You get into Spalding Reef, those types of areas. Of course, Carlos, the Fingers, all those areas there will start to light up as well. It'll just consistently get better as we get further into our springtime and our warmer air and warmer water continues to flow in here and warm up. But again, really targeting the grass and grass potholes. This whole shoreline here that goes all the way back up to Jaybird. Of course, this is Sherman's right here, this big old back lake here. It hadn't been too fishable just because of our water levels and tides. We've got in there once, I think, in the past couple of weeks just to see if there was fish. Found a few redfish, but nothing great other than that. But we've stayed, you know, there's lots of grasses in it, and we just kind of stuck with it, throwing the top waters back in those particular areas and have some fun with those and some blow-ups. But again, the same flavors that I mentioned earlier in the down south. Adjust your size as far as from the burner all the way up to the big smooth, the super model, the original model. All those are all going to be into play for you. Of course, in the knock and tail, the same thing with that. And then if you like to if you still want to throw the cork, you throw them. You know, if you have confidence in that, then throw it. A little bit bigger bait, a little bit bigger profile bait. But if you're proficient with it, then you can be very successful with it as well. But again, the Soft Dine XL, throwing back to the plastics, you're still 16th ounce jig heads, all we're using. It's all we need. Most of the water we're fishing in is waist deep or less. So you don't really need a heavy jig head to throw that thing out there. Just get your reels and stuff dialed in to how you cast, and then you can really set yourself up, and you can get plenty of distance on it to locate and find you some fish with that particular type of jig head. But be patient. Take your time with a particular area. Be very surgical when you work a particular area when you're wading through it. you'll find you some fish. Whereas, if you're drifting an area, then you can locate and cover a lot of water, but you're not quite as productive as you could be if you could just slow everything down and walk a particular area. That's why the wading is such a great thing. If you came up here on top of jbird and kind of work your way down, depending on what the prevailing winds are on a particular day that you're getting to fish, like I say, these areas are really lighting up with lots of good grass and the potholes, and that's where we're really locating our fish. So there's a good opportunity that if you hit it just right on whatever particular day that you do get to fish, you're gonna find you a quality fish in and around one of these areas, and it'll be a particularly great day for you. But anyhow, again, majors and minors, depending on where you're at. Make sure you incorporate that. Check what your tides are doing each and every day that you're going to fish. It benefits you, safety of your boat and yourself. And on top of that, you're a lot more confident when you run a particular area that you're not going to knock a lower unit off or something to that effect. But anyway, enjoy your time out on the water and take your time with it and have fun. Up in Mission Bay, we spent a day up in this area here working the reefs. They're all out in the middle, working the edges around here. Remember, I've told you about this particular area. As you get further back here on this right-hand side as you're going in, it gets really super soupy back in there. So be careful if you're going to try to wade that stuff. It's just a safety hazard for you if you're not careful. But, we drifted across some of the reefs out in the middle, caught a few scattered trout that were off it, get on the back shoreline by Mission River that comes into the drop back there. Get on that back shoreline. There's a couple of nice little back lakes. You can kind of ease up into those and wade those. Of course, they're kind of mushy too, but you can wade them. One thing that is, I didn't mention it in the other two videos, so I'll mention it in this one. Since the water temps are pretty much consistently in those 70s now, the areas that's got that'll hold an alligator or two, just make sure that you're aware of those and keep your eyes out. St. Charles is a biggie. Mission Bay and some of these back lakes up there is another particular area that we've seen them in the past. So just be aware of that, knowing that the water temps are what they are. And they're probably not going to do anything but just get warmer as we move on forward, unless we have another big cold front that comes in here, which I do not see in the future. But anything's possible. But so anyhow, just stow that away in your memory banks and just understand that. We fished on the other side of the lake, or the river. Again, the back shoreline, that whole area back there is starting to light up with some grass. Starting to get a little bit better. The shoreline's great. You got lots of good wadeable area back there. And then, of course, you get into Mission Lake, which is a little soft, but it's still very wadeable. Not as much grass in there, but we have found a few scattered redfish along the shorelines and the edges in those on a particular day. And then, of course, on this other side, just coming down this west shoreline here as you work your way back up there. Of course, you got some mangroves that are in here, a little shoreline there, and that's just a really easy wading little spot, a little bit firmer sand that's in there, and we found a few trout that are hanging off on those. So, but they haven't really pushed up on that kind of stuff just yet. They're still kind of hanging off in a little bit more mud and more grass. But those are areas that you're going to really want to keep in your memory banks as far as when to start looking for those. So if you get a chance, if you're on multiple days out on the water, just kind of try some different areas and see if there's fish holding on it for you. Fish the little cut through, fish the shell that's out here on the outside of it, and then kind of work the outer banks that are out here. As we get further into springtime, these areas out here on the front side will start to get better and better and better. As long as you've got the main things that you need, which primarily is bait, you got the right kind of structure this time of year. Just only thing is, you just kind of be careful with Copano. Even though it's a small little estuary, it gets pretty rough on a really high wind day. So always take into account where you're going to be fishing and try to fish protected as much as you can. Now, of course, you get out here on the Copano Reef, which they really haven't showed up on that yet. There's been a few fish here or there, but it hasn't been consistent. So just remember that kind of areas, especially as we get into the more of the late April, get into May, that water temp starts pushing up there close to 80. Those fish are going to start showing up on that kind of structure. But anyhow, that said, just take your time working back in here. Again, throw what you like to throw. If you're a plastics person, throw it. If you're throwing, if you're throwing a topwater, then throw it. Spend some time with it. Don't just spend 30 or 40 minutes on it and then drop off of it and do something else. But just give it plenty of opportunity and see what's happening with it. Look, again, the fish will dictate to you if you pay attention to what's going on. Like I say, we're coming up on the new moon. We've got the eclipse happening this week, so it'll be interesting to see how all this kind of stuff comes out. And we're looking forward to greater days on the water, and y'all enjoy while you can.